Welcome everyone to the 5 a.m. motivation session. And today I'm going to be talking about uh, the tactics of a lifelong genius. When I covered the book summary of 5 a.m. Club, I spoke about 10 things, 10 tactics of a lifelong genius. And over the next 10 calls, we are going to focus on each of the tactic one by one. So here is a list of the 10 techniques of a lifelong genius. And today we are going to focus on the tight bubble of total focus. So we have often heard that we have to be focused on one thing. Multitasking isn't really uh, helpful in most of the situations. There are situations where you can apply multitasking, but it's not very effective. Often, also, there is a quote from Steve Jobs. He says, I focus on one thing and I make sure that I do it well. So staying in the tight bubble of total focus means that you are totally dedicating your time for that activity for that period of time. So let's understand what is this tight bubble of focus and how can you create this bubble of focus for yourself. And as I talk about focus, I'm also reminded of the Scrum framework that we use as a way of agile working. Scrum also focus also happens to be one of the values of Scrum, and values are values are always applicable universally. They are not role bound or role specific. So the total focus here means that we minimize all the distractions, we reduce the noise that is around us, turn off unwanted notifications, and cut off the negativity in our environment. So when I say reduce the noise, it is not just the external noise that we hear. For example, we are seated in our living room and we see, we hear a lot of noise from around us. Maybe it is television set, it could be a crying baby, it could be two people having an argument. It's not just the external noise that we need to reduce, but it is also the internal noise that is happening in our brain all the time. So even when we think that, we are out of the situation, we are out of the conversation, our brain hasn't stopped thinking about it, right? And that noise is continuously triggering in our brain. So we need to be able to reduce this noise. Often meditation techniques have been helpful in reducing the noise to certain extent, but it requires a lot of self-discipline um, and a commitment towards the focus. Turn off unwanted notifications. I think this is very well in our hands to turn off the unwanted notifications. Whenever you download an application on your phone, um, when it is installing, it asks you, do you want to enable notifications? And it's also true for any web-based services that you use on your laptop. Always the notifications are triggered based on your preference. So it is completely in our hands to avoid the distractions from those unnecessary, unwanted notifications. Email has been one of the main source of distraction because whenever you get an email, you are notified that you have an email. And uh, when we go read that email, we just don't stop at reading it. I talked about the internal noise, right? So if the email consists of a bad news or something that requires immediate attention or action, you are forced to act upon that. So it's important to cut off from the notifications during your focus time. Now, focus only on the important task, not everything. We have to identify for ourselves what are the priorities for the day, for the time period, for this next 1 hour or next 20 minutes. What is my priority? And I should be focusing on that important task only. There are several books also that is written uh, to help us with some techniques on how to focus. One of the book that I was recently reading is Eat That Frog. Now, eat that frog technique or this book delivers an important message that says if people wish to be successful in their lives, then they have to take immediate and necessary actions without overthinking too much. It also means that you are focusing on one thing, and you have to identify what is the most important and immediate thing that you want to focus on, and you have to take some necessary actions without overthinking. So when I say overthinking, there might be 100 different ways of achieving a certain thing. Identify what is it that you can do to the best of your ability. Use that technique and proceed with the task. The second technique for enabling focus is Pomodoro Technique. This is a very common and very popular technique. It is a time management method. I mostly recommend this for students and somebody who is trying to gain a perfection with the task that they are doing. So it is also good for perfectionists and also procrastinators of all kinds. So we often have this tendency that we know our list of things to do, but we often procrastinate. Okay, why do it now? Let me take a break, or let me focus on something else, which may come up as an urgency, but it's not an important one. So Pomodoro technique help us to stay focused at least for the 25 minutes. It is suggested that you block 25 minutes of focus time on your calendar, or maybe, close the door for next 25 minutes. Tell people not to disturb you for the next 25 minutes, and then take a break. Take a break to catch up on those things that you have, switched off temporarily. And then the third technique which I want to share is the 5 rules of focus. There are certain rules around keeping focus, and if we become better in following that rules, then we can become a more focused individual. And these 5 rules must be followed when we are looking to focus on our efforts. So the 5 rules are: the task has to be data driven, it has to be relevant to the goals that you are pursuing, it has to be specific so that it leads to a uh, certain outcome that is expected. Try to make the task very simple. Try to break it down into necessary steps that you need to perform to get it done, and create visibility. Like on the first call 3-4 days back, I was showing you a habits tracker. It is also a good way to make sure that what you are doing is visible and you are able to track it over a period of time. If it is something that is related to your work, then we have Scrum boards, Kanban boards that we use to track our work. Sometimes what we do is we just start working on something, we don't put it there on the board, and when we have to provide a status update on that, we try to go quickly update the board. That is a very, very bad practice, because first of all, the system will consider the start date as the date on which the task is created, right? And some systems doesn't allow you to give a previous date because it messes the data. As I mentioned, the first rule of staying focused is keep your task data driven. So get into the habit of creating the task first in whatever tool you are using for visibility, and then you start working on it. Try to make it relevant to your goals, whether it is your quarterly goals or annual goals. Try to connect the dot with how this work is going to help me achieve my goal. So creativity might be needed when we are charting the list of things in a simple manner. What we do on a regular basis may not be a very simple and straightforward process. We are all learning, and we are trying to become better with things that we are doing. Uh, if um if you don't know a few things, it is not a bad idea to take help from someone who has already done it before. Or maybe we have the Google guru, right? We We can just type and check what are the simplest way of achieving a certain thing. So when we are working with a group of people for the first time, we often set some working agreements. So try to set working agreements with yourself when you want to remain in your tight bubble of total focus, because it requires a working agreement with yourself that yes, for this next 25 minutes or 1 hour, I'm going to be avoiding all the distractions. Now, sometimes there could be problem with, establishing focus, or what we also call as concentration. So here is where the focus exercises can really help. There are plenty of focus exercises that you can find on internet. Try to find a one that works for you. You may have to experiment a little bit, or the immediate effective way is to, get a coach for yourself who will help you to identify some very important and effective focus exercises. So focus exercises helps us to improve our concentration and also the time management skills. The time management is very, very important because we only have so many hours in our hand, right? And we cannot be doing a lot of things in that time. So we have to really focus on what is the most important thing. Now, focus exercises can also help improve our work productivity and social interactions. Some exercises may involve physical activity. So when I go for meetups and when I go for certain conferences, which are often half day or full day, we are asked to get up from our seats and perform a little physical activity, like you raise your hands, and maybe uh, do some activity like clapping in a particular pattern, which also brings some happiness. So try to find focus exercises that makes you happy from inside. Um Not every focus exercise requires physical activity. There might be some focus exercises which requires you to be still and calm, and that is where the meditation, the mindfulness, the exercises for your brain comes in. And these exercises helps you to shut down that internal noise that is ongoing in your brain. And you can also perform many of these actions during the downtime or while transitioning from a workday to home. So you could listen to a good podcast on this topic while you're driving from work to home. And then in your downtime, you can actually try to see if that really works for you, and see if it helps improve your focus. And as a good citizen of our country, we want to share what is working for us. So do let us know in the group what focus exercises have worked for you, and also what has not worked for you and maybe why. The one more important thing that we need to understand is the importance or meaning of focus. What does it mean? What does focus means? Uh, so experts have defined focus as the act of concentrating your interest or activity on something. So it's an act of concentrating. It's an action. It's a verb. Uh, sometimes it might feel like it's a boring definition, but there is an important insight hiding inside that definition. It says act of concentrating. So you have to perform, right? You have to make it to work. And in order to concentrate on one thing, you must by default ignore many other things, right? Because when you keep a bunch of things in front of your eyes and you want to focus on one thing, you just can't do it. You have to ignore a lot of things, and this ignorance is not permanent, right? We are doing it just for the next 1 hour or next 25 minutes. So it is important to say no to all other options and say yes to that one option that you want to focus on. So, in other words, elimination is a prerequisite for focus. There is a guy called Tim Ferriss. He says, why you don't do determines what you can do. What you don't do determines what you can do, right? So, what we are not focusing on focusing our energies on, that means we are focusing our energy on something else. So that is where we need to manage our energy. If we try to achieve a lot of things, uh, and not able to say no in the moment, or no at the present moment, it will be very difficult to keep the focus. We always have the option to do something else later. Everything isn't a priority at this hour only, right? But in the present moment, focus requires that you do only one thing. And focus is the key to productivity, because saying no to every other option unlocks your ability to accomplish one thing that is left. And now for the most important question: what can we do to focus on things that matter and ignore the things that don't? So for this, we need to understand, why can't I focus? Right? There are certain reasons why our focus is affected. And is it really the trouble with focusing or concentrating, or is it something else? And what is the myth around multitasking? We often feel that if I try to do X, Y, Z parallelly, I will be able to get all three done. But it's actually a very strong myth. So most people don't have trouble with focusing, they have trouble with deciding. So that's where the decision making is very important on what is it that you want to focus on. So what I mean is that most healthy humans have a brain that is capable of focusing if we get the distractions out of the way. So have you ever had a task that you absolutely had to get done? And what happened? You got it done, right? You got it done because the deadline made the decision for you. You have to submit a proposal by this so and so deadline. So you have no other option but to get it done, right? Uh, Maybe we try to procrastinate beforehand, but once things became urgent, it is backed up with a due date. You were forced to make a decision, and you took action on it. We did that as students also. When we have a particular date for an exam announced 3 months in advance, we don't immediately get onto it, right? But when we see that, okay, only 1 week is remaining, now I have to start preparing, that urgency creates that action for us. So why not assign that urgency mindset for the most important things that we want to focus on. So about multitasking, closing note is that multitasking focuses our brain to switch our focus back and forth. And suppose you are driving a car and you are continuously changing the gears, and you are also trying to focus on the way where the road ahead is not that great, not that smooth. What happens? You don't get a smooth ride, right? Same happens with our brain also. So when you try to focus on a lot of things, there is a lot of back and forth. There is a cognitive load created on your brain, which is not good, not healthy. And uh, yeah, that's about multitasking. If you have automated a few tasks, for example, it is just a suite of some test cases. You click run, and they run in the background, and you don't have to actually do anything manually. It is okay to run that task in the background and focus on one thing that you want to pay attention to. But if both the things that you are trying to focus on requires your manual intervention, then multitasking is not going to work. So that is why try to see what is the daily tasks that you do, what is the scope of automating that, and keep automating that. Use technology to your advantage. That is it for today. Thank you. And to just review, we were reviewing the 10 techniques of lifelong genius, and today we focused on the tight bubble of total focus. And in the tomorrow's call, I'll be talking about the 90 90 and 1 rule, and how we can use that to our advantage. So the next 10 days is going to be focusing on how we can become a lifelong genius. So thank you so much for joining, and congratulations if you are able to wake up early today and being consistent with that. Bye. See you tomorrow.